Phillip Gagnon. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. About yourself?
Pretty well. I appreciate your time and I'm looking forward to a great discussion.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so welcome to Team Lead Talks. For those of you who don't know, um, can you provide a little bit of who you are, a little bit of your background, and what you are involved in the real estate industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm currently the CEO and founder of a company called Three Data Pulse, which helps brokers, managers, and team leaders recruit, retain, and coach agents. I've been doing that now for just shy of 5 years. Before this, I was running a brokerage. We had 8 offices, 250 agents, 32 full time employees. I did that for a number of years. Before that, I was working in mortgage and marketing. And then before that, I was doing more real estate stuff, primarily in Europe and the Caribbean. And before that was more mortgage. So it's been about 20 years of real estate and mortgage.
Cool. So part of your life right now was building out brokerages. Can you walk us through what exactly that meant? Were you running your own team within that? Were you an agent? Just so we kind of get an idea of the landscape there.
Yeah, when I was running the brokerage, I was the chief operating officer. So there was an owner, or two owners actually, and then I was operating that for them, or with them, I should say.
Okay, cool. And what kind of strategies? I know in this landscape today, and please chime in where you want. Leads, business, however you want to dial it in, right? It's hard to come by. And there are a lot of agents
Mm-hmm.
kind of mass exiting from the industry. I think the last data points I saw were like 60,000 agents had left and gone back to their old, way of life or wherever, right?
Right.
So there's almost like this new idea of like joining the team. I know teams have always been around, but it's like if you're struggling as a solo agent, you kind of attach yourself to a successful team, right? Are
Yeah.
you when you were building or now, like what are you seeing out there since you got your ears to the ground, right?
Yeah, so I've been doing this professionally for 20 years, and I've been around it for 40 years. So I've had the privilege, I guess, of seeing what has gone on for the last 40 years in real estate and how things are different. One of the things that's really funny is this concept of a teamerage, and how this is sort of like a new innovative thing that people have coming up with, when in fact it is exactly how real estate offices used to operate in the 80s. It
Okay.
was 50-50 splits. It was leads, training, very hands-on, small teams. Like, an office would have maybe 20 agents. And that's exactly what real estate was in the 80s pre-Remax. And then when Remax came around and said, hey, if you want 100% commission, this is what you need to do, and came up with that whole model, that's when everything started to shift. And then you had bigger offices and all of that kind of stuff. So everything old is new again. So we're just
Right.
seeing sort of a rebirth of what's been going on. And then,
Yep.
with this commission lawsuit on top of that, there's even more of that because, people are saying, oh, we need to be training agents. Like, well, that's what we used to do. Why did we
Right.
stop? What are we doing? We got to get
Yeah,
back to that.
exactly. Yeah, it's funny. Like we still see team bridges, right? So a team, but under a brokerage, and it's just one big scenario like that, right?
That's it.
And
Yeah.
then yeah, and then potentially, I guess they could expand with other teams that don't fit their original team model. But yeah, I've been seeing that a lot, talking to a lot of people. In fact, we had a guest on the podcast last week who kind of had the same setup that way. So it's interesting to
Yep.
see. And I wasn't in the industry back then, so I'm not quite sure. But sounds like you know what you're talking about. So it's funny to hear someone else that's been in the industry way longer than me come full circle around that concept.
Yeah. For me, it's very much a family business. So my dad has been in real estate his entire career. And I used to travel with him and, make cassette tapes for him that he would sell after his seminars and stuff like that,
Nice.
duplicating cassettes and stuff. So I've been around it a long, long time.
Yeah, yeah. So coming back kind of to the concept of agents seemingly joining teams now, and I don't know if you agree or disagree with that comment that I made, but there's a lot of emphasis on recruiting and
Mm-hmm.
getting top talent, right? When you are in your role as the COO doing that yourself, what kind of strategies worked for you? Can you kind of talk us through the process or your SOP for how you would let's start with attract, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
attracting or retaining and training. And then maybe, I don't know if there's more than that, but can you kind of walk us through the different pieces of that?
Yeah. So simply put, the golden rule of recruiting is to deliver the right message to the right agent at the right time. And if you can do those three things, you'll win the recruiting battle all day long. Where it gets complicated
Right.
is who is the right agent, what's the right message, and when is the right time. And the truth is that there's
Right.
really no right or wrong time for recruiting. You need to do it all the time. I think probably the gold standard for recruiting forever, and they practice what they call 2-10-40. So their market center leaders have to have 2 recruiting appointments a day, 10 a week, 40 a month. That's a lot of recruiting appointments. And they're not trying to recruit necessarily all of those agents, but it just means
Right.
that they're constantly doing it. They're constantly practicing it. So one of the things that I see a lot of is that people will try and pick up and put down recruiting. Like, oh, we're going to recruit today and then not do anything for 2 weeks. Like, you can't
Right.
do that. It's got to be an all the time thing.
Yeah, I
So
think
then from there,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, I kind of think of it as the same regard as like a team lead who's responsible for lead gen or an agent.
Yeah.
It's like payroll. You have to do it no matter how hard it is to do. And sometimes you're like, I won't be able to do this much longer. But the second you take your foot off the pedal and lead gen, you're going like this. But the
Yeah.
more consistent, it's a numbers thing, right? And how often does luck play into that too? I mean, you mentioned like you have to hit them at the right time. It might not be the right time this week. Something major could happen next week, and then it is the right time, and then they get another message from you. So same thing with a seller or a buyer, right? So consistency is key there across lead gen, and it appears to be around recruiting as well.
It's the same thing. I mean, it's all marketing, right? It's all sales and marketing, and you can't just flip a switch and turn it on and turn it off again. So yeah, the real trick is just to do honestly, and it was so funny. It didn't hit me until this year, but when I was working at the brokerage and when I was doing master franchise servicing and franchise servicing, we would always talk about crafting the right message and what things do you need to say and what are the right objection handlers for this specific thing. And what I realized late this year, I should say, is that none of that really matters. The only thing that matters is just getting in front of people. I mean, it's just doing it. You're better to get in front of somebody and say nothing than to not say anything or not get in front of them.
Yeah, get started yesterday, right?
Exactly.
When is the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Today, or whatever that saying is.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of like a paralysis, or you get really stuck in a hard place.
So much of that.
Stop that, right? Like
so much of that. Of that. Everybody says, "Oh, I want to create a campaign because the email doesn't look right." It's like, well, first off, that should be completely irrelevant because agents aren't going to look at emails that have graphics and pictures and colors and whatever because they instantly know you're trying to sell them something. So it should look like nothing. So let's start with that. Number one. And then number two, just send them something. Like, it doesn't matter. Just send them something.
Yeah.
It's just the repetition.
If not for like catching them at the right time, at least they're starting to see you over and over, right? So whatever brokerage you're at, whatever team you're at, if you're not a massive powerhouse and they see you visually, like your yard sign in every other house, they're just at least getting messages from you on a consistent basis, right? That's the idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
What you're trying to create is sort of that starstruck kind of effect, so that they're seeing your name, they're seeing it in the inbox, they see your picture, they see it on social media, and then one day you run into them at like a networking event or something, and they're like, I know that guy. Where do I know that guy from? Oh, that's the guy that's been emailing and talking and whatever. And you kind of have that moment where they're like, I want to go say hi. And then you get people coming up to you because you've created this aura with just constantly being in their face.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from the other side too is like, Phillip wants me on his team. I see him everywhere. He's this major player. So it kind of helps, obviously builds credibility. And if you are super successful anyways, right, that also helps to retain attract that top talent to you. But that's hard.
Absolutely.
Not a whole lot. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of successful teams, but not everyone has that luxury, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the attraction piece is really, that's such a long play. I mean, you've got to do this for years to build up the credibility and stability and have a good track record. So again, it's something you should definitely be working on every day. But you also need to do some more proactive stuff in the interim.
Right, right. So that's how you attract, right? So
Mhm.
I think a lot of people are also worried about when they attract, and you have to invest in your people, right? You have to have some value, whether that's, hey, we do a lot of business, hey, we have the best systems, hey, we have this, hey, we have that. Like, now let's walk through like the next phase of recruiting. You've attracted someone, you have them in. How did you sell them, and how are you teaching brokerages and teams to sell their value?
Oh yeah, so that's my favorite part of the whole recruiting process is the recruiting appointment. And so we teach a 5-step process, which works for listings, by the way, as well. So it's the same kind of process. But number one is to build rapport with that person. So you want to connect with them on a human level, not business related. Find things that you genuinely have in common. This isn't like you're trying to figure out some kind of nonsense thing where you connect. No, like legitimately connecting with people on a human level. And when you do that, then people develop trust and they'll
Mhm.
start to trust you, which you need for step 2, which is discovery. And in discovery, you have to ask questions. You got to peel the onion back, ask second level, third level, fourth level questions. And some of those can be really probing and be seen as invasive. But if you've got somebody's trust, then it doesn't feel that way at all because you're just trying to get to an answer. For
Right.
example, if you go to a doctor, the doctor is going to ask you all kinds of crazy questions that if the cashier at the grocery store asked you those questions, you would freak out and say, why are you asking me this? This is totally inappropriate. But
Yeah.
because the doctor has credentials and they've built up that trust, it doesn't feel weird at all. So
Right.
you go through discovery. In the discovery process, you're trying to identify 3 to 5 problems that you can solve.
Hmm. Can
And,
you give
and
us
then you
an
go into your
example?
presentation.
Yeah, give us an example of like a handful of those that an agent coming to a team or a brokerage might need help with, right?
I mean, lead gen. That's probably the easiest, most obvious one. Um, Treating it like a business. That's a real big one that, because everybody sets it up and they have their license in their name and they don't have business accounts for anything. So everything,
Yeah.
like from tax standpoint, everything just gets really messy.
Yeah.
So that's a big one is helping them treat this like a business. Getting off the income roller coaster, right? We talked about the lead gen going up and down and up and down. So I get a ton of business and now I'm poor and now I'm rich again. So
Right.
just trying to even that out. Yeah. So, so if the agent came in and I said, how are your listings? How many listings do you get? How many listings do you want to get? Oh, I don't get nearly enough or whatever. Okay. I know I've got 3 things that will help them get listings. So when I
Hmm.
get to my presentation, I'm going to talk about those 3 things and highlight them and confirm that they see that those things will help them get listings
Right.
or lead gen or whatever those things are. And
Yeah.
now I'm building value in the presentation.
Yeah. And there's an important play too with the brokerage itself, right? Because that does help,
Oh,
certain.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they've
Yeah.
got tools and a lot of times they'll have more name recognition than, a team or any other agent or anything like that. So we used to say that there was the Trinity. There was, like if they had a franchise, so it'd be the franchise, the broker, and the agent. And they would market all 3 of those together all the time, never one without the other.
Hmm. Hmm. And I know we
Leveraging all
talked
those
about the
things.
consistency aspect of this, but the volume aspect, uh, I know you have a lot of background around this, but from your experience, and I don't know if you have this info in front of you or can give us ballparks, but for those trying to recruit, sometimes you get lucky, right? You meet that one person, and you're like, wow, we want
Mm-hmm.
them on the team, and it just marries up, and you have a really good business relationship together. But I also built a team starting back in 2013, still runs and operates today, and it's tough, right? Because you want to meet and find the best 18 players, but then sometimes it doesn't work out. They go with someone else, and then you kind of have to start over, and it's hard and
Yep.
it's a little deflating. Just like going on listings is when you don't get every single part of the business, right? So, what from a brokerage perspective, and I know you walked through like the 210 KW model, but on
Mm-hmm.
average, I mean, just for those out there that are struggling or potentially getting deflated after having 2 conversations with potential new team members, what are you seeing in terms of like averages? How many people do you have to talk to find that 1 or 2 that you do want to invite to
Yeah, and
join your brokerage
and
or
I
team?
would say even before that, I think it's important to go into these appointments, the recruiting appointments or listing appointments or whatever, with an understanding that this is a 2-way interview. That you don't
Hmm.
have to take them. They may not be a fit, and if they're not a
Right.
fit, they're going to make your life miserable. So it's a 2-way street. When we bring on new
Yeah.
licensees, I would try and discourage them from even getting into the business. And that was the interview. And if
Right.
they could overcome all of the stuff I was throwing at them, then they were likely going to be successful. The first question was always, have you ever wanted to run your own business? Have you ever wanted to own and operate your own business? And there was no right or wrong answer to that, but it was how they answered that told me whether or not they were going to be successful. So if they said, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to show up, punch a clock, and go home at 5 o'clock. Yeah, real estate's not for you. This is not going to work. You're not going to be
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah.
But if they said,
You're filtering
I
out.
like the,
Yeah.
exactly. So then they would say, well, I've thought about it, but I don't know. And QuickBooks scares me and whatever. And I say, okay, well, if I could help you with all that, do you think that you could run and operate your own business? Say, yeah, probably if I had some help. I say, okay, now this is somebody we can work with. So that appointment is definitely a two-way thing. It's not just I'm going to take everybody. In terms of just raw stats, one of the things that we see in the software is it takes, on average, about 10 phone calls to get an appointment with an agent, to get them to sit down with you.
With
So it may
one
not be
agent.
10 calls. Yeah. So it may not be 10 to the same agent, but you'd have to talk to 10 agents. One of those 10 will agree to meet with you.
All right. So like a 10% conversion from a cold outreach to an in-person.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Or maybe it's selling a warm outreach, right? Maybe you've sent them a few emails and text messages, and then you get them on the phone and they say, sure, let me see what you guys have to offer.
Yeah. And out of curiosity, Philip, before you go on to your next point,
yeah,
how are you finding that information to get to the 10 people you even reach out to? Are you doing some due diligence on the front end to say like, hey, I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. I want to start growing my team. If it's not like word of mouth or, direct relationships with someone that you have an idea for, pretend this is just all cold, right? Are you looking at any internal MLS data, for example, around like how many deals that they've done? Does that factor into this for like agent team recruiting?
Yeah. So the MLS is interesting as a data source because it can tell. So when an agent's going to switch, there's three factors. Number one, they have to have a reason to switch. Number two, it has to be the right time for them. And then number three, they have to find the right home.
Mm-hmm.
They have to find their next home, I should say. Not the right home, but the next home.
Right.
And the MLS can tell you if it's the right time, but the MLS can't tell you if the agent's happy or not. And the agent can't tell you whether or not they found the next office or company that they want to go work for. So that's that piece of it. Agents that have higher production levels take a lot longer to move, which means that it needs to be more painful because they just have so much more business, especially a team. You're talking about moving, a 10-person team. So now you want to move, but now you got to convince these other 10 people they want to move too. And you don't want to have any breakage. So it's hugely disruptive. So what that means is that it really has to be painful for them to want to leave. So if you see a team leave brokerage A, go to brokerage B, I would look long and hard before considering brokerage A because clearly there was something not good happening over there.
Right.
So in terms of, contact information or whatever, that's what we have in our system at 3 Data Pulse with, over 100 different brokerages using it now. We can see, how many phone calls do they make before they get an appointment. So it's about 10. And then it takes about 4 appointments to get a recruit. So they'll meet with 4 different agents to get one recruit. So if you track this across the funnel, you need to send out like a few hundred emails to get your 4 appointment, or to make 40 phone calls to get 4 appointments to get 1 agent. So it's 10 phone calls to get 1 appointment, 4 appointments will get you 1 agent.
Gotcha. And what data statistics? I know you're pulling from your software, right? But is that U.S.? Is that North America? Do you have
It's
that
just
drilled
U.S.
down?
Yeah, it's just U.S. Yeah, we're across the country into Hawaii, so we got a lot of different data from a lot of different places, but it's just the U.S. And Canada is different. It's really different, and then Europe is even more different in terms of what that looks like. We were talking about real estate in the '80s, and Europe operates there globally. The real estate market operates kind of like it did here in the 80s. So you've got much smaller offices with, only a few agents in there, and it's really hands-on with the broker and that kind of thing. So it's completely different.
Gotcha. Okay. So we talked about attracting and obtaining new people under the brokerage, but then there's that old thing of like shiny object syndrome, whatever you want to call it. Someone comes into your brokerage or on your team and then they're successful. And for whatever reason, maybe there's a new awesome brokerage coming into town that's swooping up all these agents, or they think that their success is their success and not the team's or brokerage success, and they want to go out and do it on their own. What are you seeing in terms of like helping your customers or your, the brokerages and teams that work with you retain and keep these people?
Yeah,
How are
so
you
it's
handling that?
so we what we so most team leaders, managers, brokers don't like to recruit. And the biggest reason is the rejection piece is that doesn't feel good. People
Mm-hmm.
don't like it. It's a really primal instinct that keeps us away from doing that. However, most people like the retention aspect of thing, which is the personal relationship, ongoing personal relationship with their agents. And so what we tell them is to use their existing agents as a proving ground or a farm for their recruiting activities. Because you've got agents in your
Mm-hmm.
brokerage that you love, that you would clone if you could. And there's other agents that are just like them, that look like them, that are out in the marketplace that you haven't met yet or haven't recruited yet. So if you can get the
Right.
agents in your brokerage excited about something, whether it be a new feature, a product, a tool, something you're rolling out, then agents that look like them on the outside are going to get excited about that same thing. So the retention piece becomes very on purpose and deliberate as a way of practicing your recruiting efforts. And in doing so, you're selling the agent on that value that you have so that they don't wake up one day and say, what am I paying for? Why am I here? Nobody
Mm-hmm.
talks to me. I get no help, no support, no leads, no nothing. And I got to
Right.
give away, half my commission or whatever it is. Why am I here? I'm going to go somewhere else. And that's ultimately
Right.
what happens.
Right. Right. So the part about like having or seeing successful agents within the brokerage that's trying to recruit them, how big of a role do they actually play? Is it just the messaging, or are you talking to people about actually meeting with those, like the top team at brokerage ABC, right? You're recruiting this other team or agent high producing from XYZ. Are you marrying them up for like a one-off interview to be like, hey, here's why you want to come here, and they're meeting with these people? Or is it just like, hey, this is the caliber of team that we're recruiting? Can you kind of walk us through that
Oh, you
aspect?
mean like showcasing existing agents as like using them as leverage to come over?
Yeah, is that like something that you're seeing? Is that something that you recommend, and is that part of the leverage that they're
Um,
using?
yeah, that'll happen primarily with bigger teams. Again, because it's such a disruption, they want to know like, is this what they're telling me it is? Like, you talk a good game, like it sounds really good, but am I
Right.
going to get over here and it's going to be a complete disaster and this is going to cost me 6 months worth of business?
Right.
So that's where the power of testimonials is so impressive. Is you can have an agent come over, you have a great onboarding experience, and they'll pull over 5 agents from their old brokerage with reach back
Mhm.
recruiting. So the onboarding process becomes really powerful, and that's where other agents can come in and help mentor and guide and do stuff. Um, but I'd be careful. I'd be careful about introducing people maybe too early or without having had proper conversations ahead of time, because
Yeah,
you don't want to end
obviously
up
you wouldn't do that for
with more
everyone,
problems. But
you want to be cognizant of their time and not have them meet with everybody, right? And
yeah, for
maybe
sure.
even use it sparingly for certain high value high value teams or people that you want to join, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's kind of I mean, I wasn't a brokerage recruiter with teams or agents, but those are kind of the three buckets that I imagine. Am I missing anything? Is there anything else here that
Which
makes
3 buckets?
so attracting,
Mm-hmm.
having them join or getting them to get into your brokerage or your team, and then retaining them and keeping them as the top talent? Any other thing for your
Yeah.
company? Are
So
you teaching any other concepts here?
the big the third pillar that we talk about is coaching, which we differentiate from training because we find training to be more of a retention piece
Mm-hmm.
than it is a coaching piece. So where we mark the delineation is retention is going to be anything that's sort of ongoing one-on-one personal connection with the agent, whereas coaching is going to be business related. So coaching is going to revolve around how much money do you want to make this year? Why do you want to make that much money? How much more is that than last year? What are you going to do with the difference? And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of becomes the center of your business plan. And then coaching is just following up on that on a weekly, monthly, daily basis, whatever it is, to make
Right.
sure that they're doing the stuff that they need to do. And then that coaching piece becomes really powerful because then other agents are going to see that in the market, like, wow, you're up 20% this year. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's because I'm, going through this coaching program that they've got at the company. And these coaching programs don't have to be anything extraordinary. It's just the fact that somebody is paying attention and watching and putting a little bit of focus on that one thing makes all the difference. So for
Right.
the last 4 years, we've compared agents that have received coaching to agents that have not received coaching in the program. And every year, agents that are coached outperform the market by 30% or more
Mm-hmm.
consistently every year, which
So
is
are
a
you?
wild statistic.
Yeah, no, I see the need for it, and it's like on our team, right? Before you start tracking anything, you really don't know what people are, how they're performing, what they're doing in relationships to their goals, or what they did last year versus this year, kind of thing. So it's
Yeah,
almost like an accountability metric, right? Built in
absolutely.
from these cadenced meetings, whether it's weekly, monthly, whatever. But if you kind of just turn someone loose and give them leads and never ask them, it's like
They're going to be out of
a
the business in
child,
six
right? You
months.
have to follow up with them and you have to see what they're doing and make sure I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but like make sure that they know someone's going to be asking them what happened to all of the leads that they got and where, where the business is. So when you
And
say
yeah,
there's a coaching aspect to the program, are you helping teams and brokerages implement that? And do you have
uh-huh.
like so can you
Yeah,
walk
we
us
have
through?
some. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we have some templates and stuff that we give our companies, and the first thing that we say is it starts at onboarding. So when you onboard a new agent, there should absolutely be a business plan done with that agent in the first 3 months at most, like
Hmm.
ideally quicker, because you want to get them in and you want them to achieve their goals, but using your tools and systems and processes, because that's what's going to
Hmm.
keep them. You can't
Right.
make them do your goals because that's manipulation and coercion, but you can get them to hit their goals with your tools and systems and processes, and that's what the business plan does.
Right.
So when we talk about a business plan, we say, okay, what is it that you want to do? Like I was saying before, what is it you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How much of an increase is that? What are you going to do with that increase in money? So let's say, based on the numbers, it all works out. You're going to have an extra $100,000 at the end of next year if you hit your goals. Okay, what are you
Mhm.
going to do with that? Because nobody's going to have money for money's sake. Like unless you're Scrooge McDuck and you're, swimming in your bathtub full of gold coins somewhere. That's not what people do with money. They buy stuff, they go
Right.
on trips, debt, whatever,
I
and then
do
you
that
use
just for
that.
the record. I do.
Is that where you came with the name Billions?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Something like that.
So the have attaching that goal to an emotion is what's going to get people through the year. Because that's otherwise people are going
Hmm.
to drop out by January, February. But having attached to an emotion is how you're going to keep them motivated over the course of the year. And then a good business plan should result in a either daily, weekly, or monthly activity goal that agent could do. So they might be, their goal might be through FISBOs or expireds. Like, okay, how many are you going to call a day? It may be, doing pop buys and customer appreciation events. How many are you going to do a month? Like there should be a really specific number of things that they can take action on every day, week, and month that doesn't involve anybody else. So like, for example, listing appointments would be sort of a lag measure that they can't do that today. Like you can't just call a hotline and get listing appointments. If you could, I mean, that'd be a multi-billion-dollar business, but you can't do
Yeah,
that. So you have to do all of these other activities first. And so that's what the plan should be. And then coaching just becomes a check-in on that. Like, how's your mindset? How are you feeling? Did you hit your goal? Why not? As your manager, team leader, broker, what roadblocks can I remove? What tools and systems do I have that will help you achieve your goal? That's the other thing that happens both in recruiting and coaching is that people will just throw everything at the agent. And
hmm,
everybody offers way too much stuff to be able to do that. So if you look at like a doctor and a pharmacy, you've got 10 billion drugs at the pharmacy. The doctor doesn't prescribe every single medication for everything.
yeah.
So we ask some probing questions, we do some tests, then we figure out what are the things that are going to help you that are best for you, not everything. And as a
Right.
broker, manager, team leader, you got to take that same approach and say, okay, you're trying to do these goals. Here's the 3 tools I'm going to give you. We've got 10,000 others.
Hmm.
You don't need those right now. You just need these three
Start
to do your
small.
activities. Exactly.
Right.
So you
What
give
is
a
the
prescription and they run
number?
from there.
I'm curious if you have this data, and I have an inclination of what people might be saying today. But what's the number one thing people are saying that they need from a brokerage or a team?
Support.
In what regard?
It's hands down. It's always support. And
Like emotional
it's
support,
They
transaction
won't say
support,
that. They
support.
won't say emotional support, but that's a huge part of it for sure. You
Yeah,
ask anybody that's coached agents, the first half an hour of a coaching session is therapy.
yeah,
So emotional support is, I mean, the truth is that it's hard, you know, I mean, you don't get a paycheck. A lot of times the agents don't have a spouse that supports them.
hmm
So like, you know, they go home after getting their head kicked in all day, and, you know, hung up on the phone and driving all over the place. And then their spouse says, "When are you getting a paycheck?" It's like, I don't get a paycheck. It's not
right,
that line of work. So the office becomes a sanctuary, really, where you can get a reprieve from the chaos of everything that's going outside. So the emotional support is definitely part of it, although nobody would say that. It's, you know, deal doctoring. You know, if I have a problem, a question, I need to be able to talk to somebody. Like, I don't want to I don't want to submit a ticket through a help desk,
right,
wait 3 to 5 business days. Somebody's going to FedEx me an answer. Like that doesn't work.
right.
When I have a problem, I need somebody. I need to be able to talk to somebody.
Basically, like
That's
the
the kind of support.
community camaraderie, if we want to call it that, feel of being like in person now, because I know a
Yeah.
lot of stuff is done by Zoom and people work from home all the time now. But having someone to talk to, because it can be if you're a solo agent, it can be super lonely, just like any
Even if you're on a
entrepreneur would.
team, even if
Yeah,
you're on a team, it can still be really lonely. If you guys aren't meeting on a regular basis, which you absolutely should, but that's another topic. But you should absolutely be meeting. But it does get really lonely. It's tough.
right, right, right. So, are you, just so I have a clear understanding, you are coaching the coaches here? You're saying,
Mm-hmm.
hey,
Correct.
you want to recruit them, retain them, you have to coach them. Here's how you would do that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't want to coach, not your agents, but I don't want to coach your agents. I don't want to coach any brokers' agents, because then those agents are going to develop a relationship with me.
Right.
And then they're going to say, okay, well, I got this outside coach. I've got my own CRM because I don't trust my broker. And I've got this other thing over here. What do I need this brokerage for? I'm going to go to 100% shop, spend my money the way I want to,
Mm-hmm.
and make more money, which
Right.
obviously you don't want that. So
Right.
not you, but the brokers, managers, team leaders should be doing that coaching as a way to strengthen and deepen that relationship.
Right. And as part of your company, your personal company,
Mm-hmm.
you're giving them kind of the guidebook or, the franchise model on how to do the coaching and how to run the cadence meetings, right? So you're setting them
Yeah,
up
I
for
mean, some
success.
of that is some of that is going to be up to them. You know, like for example, if you've got a high producing agent that's been doing this for 20 years, you're very likely not going to get them to come in every week to talk about how many leads they followed up with and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And even at that
Right.
point, you know, the conversation is going to be different, because then we're going to be talking about, well, let's normalize your P&L so we can benchmark it against other high producing agents to make sure that you're spending where you need to be and you're cutting where you need to be. So the coaching becomes a little bit different at that level anyway. So your higher producing agents, it may be a quarterly check-in. Newly licensed agents, I mean, that's got to be almost daily, if not, you know,
Right.
certainly weekly for sure. So your
Right.
production levels, or the agent's production levels, will kind of dictate that. The other things, you don't want them in coaching sessions all day long. You want them talking to people, you know,
Yeah.
getting
True.
those leads, getting business, doing stuff. You don't want them in the office all day
Actually
long.
meeting prospects.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
I thought it was
Exactly.
I'm wondering, is there, we're kind of talking about two different things. We're going back and forth, right, between the brokerage
Uh-huh.
recruiting and then like a team recruiting. Do you
Right.
have your opinion on like where that happens more, the coaching aspect of it, from like individual agents slash teams under a brokerage, or you're on a team with a team leader and agents? Are you seeing a difference in production in coaching meetings from between the two?
Nothing distinguishable. You know, the truth is that, you know, some brokers don't offer it. Like, I know of a broker that refuses to coach his agents because he
Mm-hmm.
says that ultimately agents will become frustrated with their coach, and then they'll leave. And if I'm their coach, then they're going to leave my brokerage. But if I don't coach them, then when they get
Mm-hmm.
frustrated with the coach, they'll just get a different coach, which I don't know that I buy into that logic, but that's what they say. So that's their thing. So
It's an
people that do
approach.
it, it's an approach. Yep, it's not what I
Yeah.
would do, but it's certainly an approach.
Right.
But if you're doing it, you're going to get some results, and then you can only improve it from there. And I don't know that it's, you know, it's what I'll tell you. Another thing that we do see, and you probably see this more with teams, but you see this with agents that do a lot of relocation business through their brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
That gets really hands on, because there's leads that are being handed off that are expensive, and so
Yeah.
they want to make sure that they're closing, and those agents get, you know, really good really quick because they're constantly improving and getting better. That's really what the
right,
coaching
right.
comes down to. It's like practice. You look at a professional athlete. Professional athletes don't train, 1 hour a month. I mean, it's like 3, 4 hours a day, twice a day, 6 days a week, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, they train with a coach too, right? That was one of the biggest
Exactly.
things, not to go like on a tangent about that particularly, but for agents out there struggling and either kind of deciding whether to stay in the industry or get out of the industry, join a team, switch brokerages, whatever. One of the biggest things for us, and I ran the team with my business partner. That's when I say us, was attaching ourselves to a coach because you're learning and expediting that learning curve by 10 years because
Yeah,
your coach has been around for 30 years and you're getting all their lessons learned, best practices kind of thing from almost day one. It's overwhelming. There's a lot of information to digest and figure out how to approach it. But kind of the same thing with what you're getting at. Like if you're following someone who's been through the industry, knows everything there is to do, you're just going to be that more successful. And listening to the
absolutely.
coach, kind of like there's a 50 different things a brokerage can get you, but let's start with the first two. Start with just sending an email, regardless of what the
Yeah,
message is, so they
exactly.
see it.
That's it.
So that's kind of how we thought of it too. We thought we didn't know what we didn't know when we first started, so it was like I'll figure it out.
Right.
And then like $10,000 later and no appointment later, you're like, oh crap! Like
Maybe we should call
let's
somebody.
talk to someone who might know how to set an appointment because you're new to it, right?
Exactly. And even if the coach that you are working with or whatever has, they may even have less experience than you do, but just having that independent third party look in and be able to call you on your nonsense is
Right.
that's worth everything right there. I know in my business there's a lot of things that I'm not doing that I should be and could be doing, that somebody from the outside would look at it and be like, well, yeah, why aren't you doing that? Like, I don't know. I
I have
didn't
a
think of
really
it.
good example, and it's really kind of embarrassing. But we had a coach, and he would come like once every quarter or so. He would actually come in person. We'd have our like monthly meetings, but he came and was like, "All right, I want to see your data around like how many agreements you have to give out to prospects to sign, to get a deal, right?" And
Right.
number one, we didn't have that metric, but number two, we were like, "Well, we don't give paperwork out to everyone we meet with." And he was like, even the ones that like actually want to sell, and we're like, yeah, if they want to sell with us, they'll sell with us. And he was like, how do you expect to sign people if you do not give them paperwork to sign? And we were like, oh, they'll call us. And it was really
No.
kind of like an off third party guy being like, why
What
are
are you
you
doing?
guys even doing this type of moment? And then just from the sheer change in process and policy of like, I meet with Philip and you're like, hey, I want to list my home. And I'm like, hey, even if it's not a sign on
Here's
the
the listing
spot, but
agreement.
here's our listing agreement for your review. Call us. And then I have a reason to follow up with you. We weren't even doing that.
There you
But
go.
when we made that change, our conversion rate nearly 2, 3x because now they actually had an opportunity to work with us by signing the agreement to work with us. So
Yep,
I've
absolutely.
been in that position before.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same goes for recruiting. Like, give them the contract, let them look at it, let them think about it. I mean, a lot of times, if you think about switching brokerages, it's like a full time job trying to figure out where you're going to go next and keeping it secret from your existing brokers. You don't want to shut off your CRM, you lose all your leads, and blah blah. I mean, and then plus it's just emotional and stressful and all this other stuff. So sometimes just having somebody make it really easy to decide, they win. They may not be the best, but just it's the easiest, and that's where they end up going.
Yeah, I mean, when we left our first brokerage, I won't name any names, but when we left our first brokerage into the second, and we've been with them, we're not like a brokerage hopper either, but we went from
Mhm.
one that we started with in 13 and then in 17, 18, 2017, 18, we switched. And they made that process like so easy. It was like, hey, Andrew, Dan, we need a few pieces of homework from you. But transferring, like, there's a lot of logistics and mechanics that have to happen behind the scenes. Not only like
Yeah.
moving all of your stuff, right? There's paperwork and
Right. Yeah.
licenses that need to get transferred. And they like white gloved it, handled everything, got our offices set up. That was such an awesome feeling and a welcoming feeling as well. But
Absolutely.
if we were like, and this is big, even when they're like the teams out there that are thinking about an agent coming from another team in a different brokerage, like you have to think about this stuff. They might not
Oh,
know
yeah.
what it takes to move from one to the other. Maybe it's in the same brokerage, so it's a lot easier, and it's like a internal, agreement. But as
Sure.
much as you can white glove, make it turnkey for the recruitee or the person you're recruiting, the
Yeah.
better, right?
Absolutely. Hey, that's really your chance to show off. I mean, because everybody can say anything they want in emails and texts and phone calls and appointments, but once they say, "Okay, I'm here. What do we do?" That's when you really get to show off and put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. And
Right.
that's going to get around, right? I mean, because I'm sure you told other people when you got to that second brokerage, like, no, the onboarding has been great. It's been seamless. We didn't miss a beat. Like other people hear that and they're like, "Well, I wasn't thinking about switching, but maybe I am now."
Yeah. Yeah, the process, they might talk to someone and the process was amazing and they had a bad experience with the last one. So there might be a little salty or sour around that. But I think that's a big
Absolutely.
part. And it's kind of your first experience too, again, whether it's with a brokerage or a team, of like what it will actually be like inside of that organization, right?
Did
Because if
they
they
lie to
botch it, you're
me? Can I
like,
trust
I can't
them?
even,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, like
Exactly.
they got this wrong. Like if I'm in a pickle or like a predicament and I really need help, how's that going to go?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
Can,
how
they
big of
said I could call
a
anytime.
process? Yeah, exactly. But how big of a process, Philip, is that from when you're helping to coach these people do what we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes? That as you peel back the onion, you're like, hey, walk me through how you recruit team or brokerage. Are you seeing that? And then, or are you shocked by the fact that they don't do that kind of thing? Like, what are you seeing out there?
Well, I'm first off, I'm not shocked by anything. It used to be just a quick history lesson, but it used to be that there was more franchises than independents in terms of real estate companies. And the franchises had true business consultants that would meet with the owners, review their P&Ls, do all this kind of strategy stuff. And then years ago, they all started to get away from that. And now that doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
exist anymore. So now you've got people that have been in the space for, let's say, 10 years that have never been taught how to recruit. They've never been taught how to retain. They've never been taught how to coach, which is the three pillars of running, an office or a team or whatever. So
Right.
the fact that people don't know how to do it is almost a foregone conclusion at this point because nobody's ever been taught. So we'll sit down
Mm-hmm.
with them. And the first thing that we talk about is, why do you want to recruit agents? It's not fun. There's a lot of rejection. It's painful. Why do you want to do this? And so the
Yeah.
same process that they would use with their recruiting or with their existing agents, we use with them. So you're going to
Yeah.
recruit agents. Okay, what is this going to do for you? How is this going to impact your life? And then what we're trying to get to is, making phone calls to prospects is scary and dangerous. But if I do it, I'm going to get a boat, or I'm going to get a trip, or I'm going to pay off credit card debt, or I'm going to get this thing that I've now got this
Right.
emotion attached to. So it's no longer, it's big and scary. It's like, this is the pathway to the thing that I really want. So that's
Mm-hmm.
where we start. Is
And
starting
is
with
that a
that.
combination of like literally outbound cold calling agents with in combination of like emails, just hitting them from any way that they can?
So it's repetition. It's repetition. It's awareness. What is it? People have to see something 7 times, 12 times before they recognize it, or whatever that is. So
Right.
it's definitely doing that. There's a lot of different strategies. Social media, going to brokers opens and networking events, that kind of thing. Again, if we can, people want to work with people they know, like, and trust. And so how do I know if I can know, how do I know if I can trust you or like you? Well, if we have a lot of things in common, we hang out at the same places, then, we're likely going to get along and this will be a good working relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different strategies around that. Obviously phone calls. I mean, at some point you're going to have to talk to somebody to get them to at least meet with you. And I don't
Right.
think anybody's switching brokerages simply by filling out an online form without ever talking to anybody.
Yeah, I
That
haven't
may
seen that
happen.
yet.
I don't think there's a lot of that. But
I think
so
Zillow's trying
so
to make
yeah,
that happen, right?
yeah, I'm sure they're trying to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to go about it, and it depends on the person and their personality. So some people love FISBOs and expireds, and some people can't stand it. But it works for some and
Mm-hmm.
not for others. So it's just determining what's going to work best for them and what are their talents and skills and that kind of thing.
Right. 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 Yeah, I mean
Everybody's
that's
going to do
all
it a little
really
bit different.
awesome info, and I think that's good for the people out there. I like your question of like, are you sure you even want to get into this? Like, this is gonna be kind of like a rough road, but going back to having like a coach, someone experienced doing that, that's the difference, right? Like
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to recruit, retain, attract, whatever the phase that you're in, it's trial and error, but linking up with someone like you who has been around the block and kind of codified that process and put a system in place to actually do it, then at that point, it kind of just becomes like consistency, but also you iterate it for whoever, it's not plug and play and don't change anything, right? They're
No,
constantly
absolutely
making
not.
it their own. They're constantly figuring out how to improve it, right?
Yep. So I mean, like right now, the market's down what 30% in most places. Let's say transaction volume's down, so that's scary for a lot of people. So if you have money, now is the time to go shopping because everything's at discount. So if you're
Right.
looking to acquire a
Yep.
team or brokerage or an agent or whatever, now's the time to do it because you're going to get it cheap compared to potentially whenever interest rates go down and there's going to be a flood and it's a whole other
Right.
situation there. But yeah, now is full of opportunity. So it's getting in front of people and saying, hey, look, that's the other thing is all the experts running around. I say experts, quote unquote experts running around saying the sky's falling. Everybody's panicking. If you
Mm-hmm.
are a lighthouse in the fog, people are going to come running. Like if you're out there saying, yeah, you know what, it's down, but we're thriving or we're doing okay or we've got this that's helping or whatever, then everybody's going to see this as a life raft and just come running and say, I'm in. What do I need to do? How do I sign up? I want to get
Right.
involved in this and get out of the fog.
Yeah, I mean, there's still teams, even in this environment, a few years ago, probably doing much more volume, but they're still doing
Sure.
a really impressive amount of volume, right? It's just not as
Yeah.
crazy as it was a few years ago.
Which was the
I'm,
craziest peak we've ever seen.
yeah, that was like an historical high, but there's still people doing business every day. There's still,
There's
recruitments
still a lot of
happening every
people being
single.
really successful, and there's people switching brokerages. I mean, I talked to an agent last night who told me that her whole office is leaving. That entire office is about to jump ship and go everywhere else. And it's happening for sure. Opportunities are
Yeah.
there.
Out of curiosity, since you've been in this part of the business for the last like 5 or 6 years, I think you said, are you
Uh-huh.
seeing tangible numbers higher or lower in terms of like people jumping ship and people kind of saying, "Hey, I need to go here"? Like, was it more of when times were good, everyone was identifying a single brokerage and saying, everyone go to that brokerage because they're doing so awesome, or is it different? That was inventory was crazy, volumes crazy, and then now we're like the complete opposite. Is there a correlation between the two? Are you seeing any different number of
So
changes? Is it
what
like
we
higher,
see,
lower? What are you seeing?
yeah, so we see two things. So when the market was up, everybody was an expert and they didn't need help. So
Mm,
those companies did well, right? The companies that
right,
don't help, that offer 100% splits, whatever the deal is, because everybody knew everything. Times were good. Like, I just want more of the pie. So they did great
right.
there. And now everything's down. Everybody's struggling. And like, well, I need help and I need support. So now we're going to go back to those companies that's going to give me the things that I need. So I don't know that there's a noticeable difference of more or less people switching, but the direction that they're switching varies based on the
Yeah,
needs,
what
based on
they're
what the
switching
market is.
for changed. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. And then there's
yeah,
some new
yeah,
players
yeah.
that come in and they'll come in and make a splash. Like, when EXP launched, their strategy was to get the biggest team from KW in that market and then use that as sort of like an anchor to recruit to. I think Real did the same
Mm-hmm.
thing, and then others have followed suit. So you'll see some of that when they come into new markets. But that seems to be slowing. The
Yeah.
new
Out of
models and
curiosity, are
stuff
you
seem to be
seeing?
slowing.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot. I mean, I follow a lot of agents and teams on social media, of course, and I'm seeing a lot of talk and movement to EXP and Real and the new shiny brokerages. Are you seeing that as a differentiator? Like they're brick and mortar type of brokerages that have been around for a long time. There are these new tech brokerages that might not necessarily have offices to go to. I know some of them rent short term space where you can like a WeWork kind of thing where they have access to, or Regis, one of those. Are you kind of seeing more people going to the new cool brokerages versus the old kind of been around the block brokerages?
So what's funny about the whole cloud virtual thing is that I don't know of a team, not to say there aren't any, but I don't know of a team that works in one of those brokerages that does not have an office. So they all have
Mm-hmm.
offices. So everybody says, well, we don't need brick and mortar. We don't need brick and mortar yet. They all have brick
Right.
and mortar. It's just been decentralized away from the brokers. Now the team's doing it,
Right.
and they're
It's
doing it for
their
their
own
agents.
individual
Because
offices.
yeah, so we're still doing it. So nothing's changed as far as that goes. Uh,
Right.
there's definitely some shiny object syndrome, where people will say, "Oh, there's this new company, and I can get in on the ground floor, and this is going to be great for me." I missed the boat on EXP because I was however many years ago, but this new company is going to be the next version of EXP, and I can get in on the ground floor. But that seems to be a lot of the people that are sort of the brokerage hoppers. That every 2 years they post on
Yeah.
Facebook a cryptic message about, "Oh, big things coming, we're making moves, exciting times
I've
coming,"
never seen
and
that.
it's like.
I've never seen that before. What are you talking about?
And then you find out they just joined a new brokerage. And it's like, didn't you just
Yeah.
change? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Oh, they have
So
this, then
there's a
that's
lot of
gonna.
that.
Yeah. A lot of
This one
other
thing's going to
reasons
change
for
my
that
life.
that we won't get into. Right. 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 But that's really cool. So let me. I know I'm taking up a lot of your time this today, but I really appreciate your
Oh,
time,
good.
and I think this is like an important conversation to have. But what are your
Sure.
for those people who are kind of like struggling to do what your company offers and you help people with? What's the
Mhm.
number one lessons learned through all your experience from the time as the COO at the actual brokerage and building out that versus what you do today? What's the one piece of advice or biggest lesson learned that you can pass along to anyone listening?
One thing I've made a lot of mistakes and I've done a lot of things wrong. So I have a lot of lessons that I've learned.
It could
But
be
if I,
more than
if
one
I,
thing. If you want to give us a list, go
well,
ahead.
I don't know. Let's see if I can whittle it down quickly. I'd say every relationship has a foundation which is built on trust. So I would say that before you do anything with anybody, whether it be a seller, an agent, a team leader, a broker, whatever, there has to be some level of trust. And then that obviously will expand hopefully over time and build more trust. But that's, I think, probably the number one thing is getting people to trust you, not in a manipulative or coercive sense, but making
Mm-hmm.
yourself vulnerable enough that people can trust you. I think it will probably have the single biggest impact on your business forever. Because again, people know, like, and trust you, then they'll do business with you. So I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Cool.
On the rest of it, I think just doing anything. You think about it like going to the gym. Is it better to go to the gym for 5 minutes or not go at all? It's better to go for 5 minutes, just to be in the
Right.
habit of doing it. So with recruiting, with recruiting, retention, coaching, all of it, doing it even just for 5 minutes. So you know what? I don't feel like recruiting today. I'm going to send one email.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's enough to
Yeah.
overcome inertia, and you end up like, you know what? I can do two. I can do two more. I can do three more. And
Right.
sometimes it's just the one, but at least then you stay in that habit.
Yeah. Kind of like my not giving people a listing agreement to sign. I should have just been giving out listing agreements. Like, take action. I guess the message you're trying to convey here is like, take action,
Do
whether
something.
it's,
Do
yeah,
something.
you got to go out and do something. Kind of like, what was that movie with like Paul Rudd and they were going surfing? He's like, don't do anything. And then he didn't do anything. He's like, well, you got to do something. Oh, forgetting Sarah
Right.
Marshall. But they was teaching him
Oh, yeah,
surfing.
yeah,
It's like, well, you got to do something. So just get out
yeah.
there and
Yep.
start. Whether it's one, one text message asking someone for coffee, or one email, like you said. But I think that's great advice, and I think the trust part too, is a really big piece of it. So, Philip,
Yeah.
if someone wanted to get in touch with you to learn a little bit more about the topic that we discussed on today's episode, how
Mhm.
can one do that?
So you can go to the website, which is the number 3datapulse.com, Pulse. You can email me, Philip at 3datapulse.com. You can call me, 407-620-2387. That's my cell phone, so feel free to call me anytime. I love to help people. That's really where all of this started, was helping people, helping my managers. So anything I
Yeah.
can do to help, I'm happy to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that and for your time. And we'll also add your contact information to the description. So if anyone would like to get in
Perfect.
touch with Philip, it'll be below this episode. So feel free to reach out. Philip, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew. It was a
All
pleasure.
right.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Bye bye.
Thanks.